My name is Max. I am a math tutor at LSC-Montgomery Star Center, and in these series of videos, I will be going over the TSIA2 math portion. In this session, we'll be going over geometry and spatial reasoning, as well as probability and statistical reasoning. This question says to find the line of symmetry for the following figure. So when we're talking about symmetry, we want to think about which line cuts this figure in a way so that the two shapes that come out of this cut is symmetrical. And when we think about symmetrical is mirrored. So when we look at this shape here, it's a very odd shape, but there is one distinct line that creates a symmetrical line, and that line is right here at LF. Because if we cut it at LF, this top portion and this bottom portion are exactly the same. So that means our answer choice would have to be C. And then our answer choice would be C. The sides of one square has a length 3 meters more than the sides of a second square. If the area of the larger square is subtracted from 4 times the area of the smaller square, the result is 36 meters squared. What is the length of the sides of the larger square? So first thing we need to do is we need to draw a picture. So we have a smaller square, and then we have a bigger square. Now, we don't know the sides of either square, but we do know is that one square has a length 3 meters more than the other one. So that means that we can say if the smaller square has a side x, that means that the larger square has to be 3 more than that. So that would be x plus 3. Okay, now it says if the area of the larger square is subtracted from, that's the key thing, from 4 times the area of the smaller square, the result is 36. So if we take 4 times the area of the smaller square, now remember, area of a square is always side times side. So thus, area of the smaller square, we call this A1, would be x squared, and area of the bigger square is called A2, would be x plus 3 squared. So in our case here, our equation would be 4 times the area of the smaller square, so 4x squared minus the area of the bigger square, x plus 3 squared. That should be equal to the result, which is 36. So now that we have our equation, we can solve this. So first thing we do is we need to expand our x plus 3 squared. Now x plus 3 squared is like saying x plus 3 times x plus 3. So if you FOILed, you would get 4x squared minus, let's do parentheses, x squared plus, so you have 3x and then you have another 3x. That gives us 6x. And then 3 times 3 gives us 9 equals to 36. Let's distribute the negative into our parentheses. So 4x squared minus x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals 36. Let's combine like terms. So 4x squared minus x squared gives us 3x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals 36. And then we want to move, because it's a quadratic equation, we want to move our 36 over to the left side. So you subtract 36 both sides. So 3x squared minus 6x, and negative 9 minus 3x gives us negative 45. That's equal to 0. Now before we try to factor this into two binomials, we notice that 3, 6, and 45 are all divisible by 3. So we went ahead and did that, and we do it on both sides. We get x squared minus 2x, and then negative 45 divided by 3 is negative 15, and still equal to 0. Now we can factor two numbers that multiply to get you negative 15, but add to get you negative 2. Has to be x minus 5 and x plus 3 is equal to 0. So now we would set both of them separately equal to 0. X minus 5 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Solve for x, we get 5 and negative 3. But keep in mind, what does x represent? x represents the side of the smaller square, so we can't have a negative length. So automatically the x equals -3 would not work. But the question is saying what's the length of the larger square? So our larger square has a side of x plus 3. So we go over here and say the larger side would be x plus 3, which is just 5 plus 3, which gives us 8. So the answer would be the length of the larger side square would be 8, which gives us answer choice A. So another one says find the length of a rectangular lot with a perimeter of 82 if the length is 5 more than the width. So let's draw a picture first. So we have a rectangular lot. Now we don't know the length or the width of this rectangular lot. What we do know is that the length is 5 meters more than the width. So where the width is, let's call width x. The length is 5 more than that. So more than means you're adding on to it. So that we can say the length is x plus 5. Now, another piece of information we're given is that the perimeter is 82. So we have to think about a formula that's associated with a perimeter of a rectangle. Now, perimeter by definition is just whatever the shape is, we add all sides of that shape together. But we know that a rectangle has 2 lengths and 2 widths. So we can say the formula for perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus 2W. So this is a formula we'll be using to set up an equation for. So we can say that we have 2 times L, so 2 times our length, x plus 5, plus 2 times our width, which is 2x, and that's equal to our given perimeter, which is 82. So then what we do is we can distribute to solve for x, distribute our 2 into the parentheses, so we get 2x plus 10, and we still have that 2x here. Combine like terms, 2x plus 2x gives us 4x. And then we want to get x by itself, so we subtract 10. So 4x equals 2, that would be 72. And our last step is divide by 4 to get x by itself. And 72 divided by 4 should give us 18. However, let's think about what this x represents in our question here. Because according to our diagram, our x is just our width. But the question is asking us to find the length. So this is our width here. So to find the length, we know it's x plus 5. So x plus 5. So that has to be 18 plus 5, which gives us 23. So that is the actual length of the rectangular lot, which gives us the answer choice B. So we have a ladder is resting against the wall. The top of the ladder touches the wall at a height of 9 feet. Find the length of the ladder if the bottom of the ladder is 12 feet from the wall. First thing again is always trying to draw a picture or a diagram to kind of illustrate what it is we're working with here. So we have a ladder resting against a wall. So let's say we have a wall right here. It's our wall. And we have a ladder that's resting against it. That's our ladder. The top of the ladder touches the wall at a height of 9 feet. So that means that if this is our tip of our ladder, it touches the wall. This length here has to be 9. Find the length of the ladder if the bottom of the ladder is 12 feet from the wall. So this is our bottom of our ladder. It's 12 feet away. So we can say this is our 12. And they want you to find the length of the ladder. So we can call that x. So when we look at the shape, we see it creates a triangle. Specifically, it creates a right triangle because it makes a 90-degree angle on the bottom left right there. So we have to think about what type of formula or type of equation that's involved with a right triangle. And if you look up there on the top, it says the Pythagorean theorem. So a Pythagorean theorem applies to only right triangles. And that formula is a squared plus b squared equals a c squared. So that's our Pythagorean theorem, where a and b are what's always considered our legs of the triangle, and c is always the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the slanted side. So when we look at our diagram here, we can call our legs here, this is our a, and this is our b. That means that our c here has to be the x. So plugging everything into our formula, what we would have is we would have 9 squared plus 12 squared equals the x squared. So then we would square them. So 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144. This is x squared. And if we add 81 plus 144, it gives us 225. And then to get x by itself, because we're trying to solve for that, we want to take a square root to get rid of our power of 2. So take a square root of both sides. And then the square root of 225 should be 15. So we can say that x is just 15. And that right there represents the length of the ladder, which is what we're looking for. Therefore, the answer choice is D. So let's look at some problems involving volume. So the height of a box is 7 inches. Its width is 6 inches less than its length. Find the width if the volume is 280 cubic inches. So when we're talking about a box, so we know if we draw kind of like a box real quick here. So we have a box here, that, and we have that, something along the lines of that. So this box, a box has 3 dimensions because it's a 3-dimensional object. It has a length, it has a width, and it has a height. So we can call this long side here our length, the shorter side our width, and the vertical length our height. So those are our 3 sides of or the 3 known quantities of a box. Now, because the question says find the width if the volume is 280, that's the formula or equation we want to work with. The volume of a box is length times width times height. So that's what it is. Now, we're given the height. We're given the height is just 7 inches. But we actually don't know the length of the width. What we do know is that the width is 6 inches less than the length. So which means that whatever the length is, you subtract 6 to get our width. So we can call our length x, some unknown x, which means our width has to be our length x subtracted by 6. So we now have everything we need to set up our equation. So let's write on the left-hand side, length times width times height. So x times x minus 6 times 7. So x is our length, x minus 6 is our width, and 7 is our height. It is equal to 280, the given volume. So before we solve anything, let's make it easier for ourselves. Because there's a coefficient of 7 here, let's go ahead and divide both sides by 7 to make it easier. There's no need, it's less multiplication for us. So on the left-hand side, we're left with just x times x minus 6. And the right-hand side, 280 divided by 7 is 40. And then we just can distribute the x. So x times x is x squared, and x times negative 6 is negative 6x. So we're dealing with the quadratic equation. So let's subtract 40 over to the left-hand side. So that would give us x squared minus 6x minus 40 equals 0. So we should be able to factor this. So we think about 2 numbers that multiply get you negative 40, but add to get you negative 6. That would have to be x minus 10 and x plus 4. Because negative 10 times positive 4 is negative 40, and negative 10 plus 4 equals to negative 6. So let me go up here. So now we factored it, we set both factors separately equal to 0 and solve for x. And then we solve for x, we add 10, we get positive 10, and subtract 4, we get negative 4. So if this question was just given just an equation, you solve for it, and you get 10 and negative 4, that would be our answers. However, because this is an application problem, and we have to think about what does x represent. X represents our length here. So a length is a measurement. You cannot have a negative length. So it's impossible for you to just pull out a ruler and try to measure negative 4 inches. That's not possible. So right away, we would, anytime you have any type of negative length, you would cancel that one out. That would not count as your answers. So the only length that we know is x equals 10. So this right here is our length. Okay, but the question, what is it asking for? The question is asking us to find the width. So the width, w, is x minus 6. So that would be 10 minus 6, which gives us 4. So that is the actual answer we're trying to look for, which is why the answer choice is A. So you want to be careful when you're working on word problems. You always want to make sure you go back and reread the question and double check what is it asking for. Because when we solve for x, we get 10. A lot of times we might kind of jump ahead and say, oh, our answer choice is C. But in fact, the question is asking for the width. So that'll be x minus 6. So 10 minus 6, which gives us 4. Now we have find the area of the shaded region. So when we look at our diagram here, we have a very kind of odd looking shape here because we have on the outside what looks like a square, but then there's a kind of like a shaded region, and it kind of splits into 2 smaller triangles. So the question is trying to find the area of the shaded region. So when we look at just the shaded region, it's kind of hard to tell what shape it is, so that'll be hard for us to find the area of that shape. However, we can actually use the known shapes that we know to find the area of them and then subtract to get our this shaded region here. Because when we look at our overall shape here on the just in general, we see that that's a square. In the area of the square, that's right, SQ, that's going to be 2 times 2 because we know this is a square because this side here is 2 and this side is 2. So both sides are the same, has to be a square. So it'll be 2 times 2, which is 4. So the area of the square itself is 4. And then if we don't look at the shaded region, we look at this area and this area, those two are actual triangles. So we can actually call this, let's write this as, let's erase this and erase this. Let's call this triangle 1 and triangle 2. So for the area of triangle 1, so the formula for area of a triangle is always 1/2 times base times height. And that comes from when we have a triangle has a base and a vertical height. So in this case, we have 1/2 times our base. Our base would be the 1 right here. And the height would have to be the 2. And then we can simplify this as 1 times 1/2 is 1 times 2. That's just going to be, or 1 times 1/2 is 1/2 times 2 is just going to be 1. Now let's look at our area of the triangle 2. Triangle 2, so we know it's going to be 1/2. What's our base though? If you look at it, this side here, it has to be 1. And how do we know that? Because the whole this whole length here has to be 2 centimeters, but we know that the left side's already given us 1 centimeter. That means the unknown right side has to be 1 as well. So we would have our base, which is 1, times our height, which is also 1. So 1/2 times 1 times 1 is 1/2. So to find the area of the shaded region, let's call this A3 here. To find A3, what we would do is we would take the overall area of the square and we would subtract from the sum of triangle 1 and triangle 2. So area of triangle 1 plus area of triangle 2. So that would give us the area of a square, which is 4, minus the area of triangle 1, which is 1, plus triangle 2, which is 1/2. So 4 minus, so 1 plus 1/2, that's 1.5. But if you want to write it as a improper fraction, it would be 3/2. Now, to subtract this, we need a common denominator. Our common denominator would be 2, so we multiply the 4/1, multiply top and bottom by 2. That gives us 8/2 minus 3/2, which gives us 5/2. So the area 3, which is what we're looking for, is going to be 5/2. And our units would be centimeters squared, because we're working centimeter, and area is always whatever that unit is squared. And then that would be answer choice D. Let's look at another, finding the area of a shaded region. So this time we want to find the area of the unshaded region. So not that triangular part. So when we look at this shape here, what do we have? So we have kind of a circle, but actually half a circle, so a semicircle. And inside that semicircle is a triangle. So we have two shapes. We have a circle and we have a triangle. So the area of a circle is given by pi r squared, where pi is the number pi and r is the radius of a circle. So when we have a circle here, the radius is always the distance from the center of a circle to any edge of that circle. So that will be our r right here. And then as we talked about earlier, the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So to find the area that we're looking for is the unshaded region. So let's call it our just general unshaded. So let's call this as A. You'll notice that what that would be is that would be our circle, but actually a semicircle. So semicircle is cutting a circle in half. So that would be pi r squared over 2 minus our area of a triangle. So that would be 1/2 base times height. So let's look at what we have here. So first off is we have to figure out what is the radius of this circle. Notice how this 6 centimeters represents the whole bottom part of that triangle there. And that base of that triangle just so happens to be what's called the diameter of a circle. So the diameter of a circle is when you stretch the two ends. It stretches from one end of the circle to the other. So that's the diameter. And the radius just so happens to be half of the diameter. So we can say that if our diameter, or our base, our diameter, which is our base, is 6, that means our radius has to be half of that, which is 3. And then the height of the triangle is that vertical length, that would be 3. So we now have everything we need to plug into our equation here. So the area of the unshaded region would be pi times r squared, which is 3 squared, divided by 2, minus 1/2 times our base, 6, times our height, 3. So if we simplify, 3 squared is 9 times pi is just 9 pi over 2, minus, so we have 6 times 3, which is 18, divided by 2, but we want to keep it as 18 over 2 because we need to combine our like terms. So then we can now, both the denominators are 2, so we can rewrite this as the area of the unshaded region is 9 pi minus 18 all divided by 2. And that would be our answer, which gives us answer choice B. For this one, we have a given circle inscribed inside a square, and we want to find the area of the shaded region where we let pi be equals to 3.14, and then you want to round your answer to the nearest whole number. So we have a circle inscribed inside a square. So again, the area of a square is going to be side times side. So if you notice, the side of our square is going to be 12 because it's parallel with our diameter of the circle here. So if this is our diameter 12, that means up here, the side of the square should also be 12. So we can say the area of the square is going to be 12 times 12, which is 144. And then the area of the circle, as mentioned earlier, that's going to be pi r squared. So it'd be pi, which is pi r squared, which is going to be 3.14, because that's when we want to let pi be. And our radius is going to be half the diameter, so it has to be 6 squared. So that's one we have to use a calculator for. So we know it's going to be 3.14 times 36, because that's 6 squared. So that's 113.04. So then the area of the shaded region, so area of the shaded, is going to be the area of the square minus the area of the circle. So it's going to be 144 minus 113.04. So 144 minus 113.04 gives us 30.96, but we want to round it to the nearest whole number, so we round up to 31. So the area of the shaded region should be 31, which gives us answer choice C. So now we go into probability and statistics. So here are some useful definitions for the statistics part of it. We have mean, median, and mode. So let's kind of read through each definition here. So mean is the quantitative data is equal to the sum of all measurements divided by the total number of elements in the set. So another way to think about mean is the average. So you add up all of your data points and you divide it by however many data points there are, and that gets you the mean or average. Median. The median is the middle measurement when the data is arranged in ascending or descending order when the data has odd number of elements. If the data has even number of elements, then the median is the average between the two middle values. So you think about median as if it's the median of a road, so just straight up in the middle. So you always order it from least to greatest or greatest to least, and then you look at the middle number. But that you can only clearly see the middle number if you have odd number of elements. So if you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see 3 is going to be the middle. However, if you have the even number of elements, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you'll end up with 2 numbers in the middle. So for instance, if I had a set of data values of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so we can kind of cross out from each side, but we end up with 2 in the middle here. So to find the actual median, you would add them together and you divide them by 2. So that gets us 3.5. So that would be the median of our elements. And then the mode is the most frequently occurring measurement in a data set. So if you had 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have 2 1s, your mode would be 1. It's the one that shows up, it's the data element that shows up the most. So some more useful definitions. We have the range. The range is the difference between the highest and lowest measurement of the data set. So pretty straightforward. We take the biggest number and we subtract by the smallest number in our data set. Now moving on to probability. So probability by definition is the chance or likelihood that something happens in the future. The values of a probability are always between 0 and 1. So when you write a probability, it has to be in a fraction form like this. So P of E means the probability of some event. What we do is on the top of our fraction is the number of outcomes in that event E, and on the bottom is the total number of possible outcomes. So the most basic example we can think about probability is, let's talk about probability of you flipping a coin and getting tails. So you would say the probability of a tails, so this is an example here, is, so you think about how many tails are there in a coin, on a coin. That would just be 1 out of a total of number of sides of a coin. So there's only 2 sides for a coin, so it'd be 1 out of 2. So the probability of you flipping a coin getting tails would be 1/2, or think about it as like 50%. With that being said, let's look at some questions involving probability. So the question says, a fair dice is rolled. What's the probability that the number shown is not 4? So first thing you want to think about is, what situation are we talking about here? We're talking about a dice. So a standard dice has 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, the question says, what's the probability of rolling the dice and the number shown is not 4? So we think about, okay, what's our fraction going to be? We know the bottom of our fraction has to be the total number of outcomes. That has to be 6, because there's 6 sides to a dice. But when we're saying not 4, we think about what numbers are not 4. So we can say we know 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 are all not 4. So that's how many sides? That would be a total of 5 sides. So the probability of it not being 4 would be 5 out of 6, which gives us answer choice C. So another question involving a dice. A fair dice is rolled. What's the probability that shows a number multiple of 3? It's a number that's a multiple of 3. So again, we list up all of our sides of our dice. We know numbers that are multiple of 3 have to be only 3 and 6. So only 2 sides. So the probability of it being a multiple of 3 has to be just 2 out of a total of 6 sides. But you always want to reduce your fraction. So 2 over 6 can be reduced. You can divide top and bottom by 2. Gives you 1 over 3. So the probability of rolling a dice and getting a multiple of 3 is 1/3, which gives us the answer choice A. Now a different scenario. So we said a card is drawn randomly from a deck of ordinary playing cards. You win $10 if the card is a spade or an ace. What's the probability that you will win the game? So first thing we want to do is we want to read our question and think about, is there any extra information that we don't need? Because the question is asking us to find the probability, it doesn't matter how much money we win. So in essence, this $10 doesn't really matter. It's just extra information that isn't needed. But what is needed is that you win the game if you draw a spade or an ace. So there's a couple things you think about. First things first is a standard deck of cards consists of 52 cards, and they're split into 4 suits, and that being spade, club, hearts, and diamonds. And each suit has the same type of cards. So the type of cards are number cards 2 through 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. So all suits have that exact same types of cards. And there's a total of 52 cards here. Now, another thing we have to think about is when we're talking in probability, we want to look at what is OR, right? So in probability, OR always goes with addition, while AND always goes with multiplication. So when we're talking about the probability of a spade or an ace, probability of spade or an ace, what you can do is you can say just think about the probability of spades separately, add that to the probability of aces. So let's think about the probability of spades. So there are spades is one of our suits. So the number of how many cards are there that are spades, it would be 13 out of 52. Because that's one suit. Now, let's think of how many aces there are. So we know there's an ace of clubs, ace of spades, ace of clubs, ace of hearts, and ace of diamonds. There are 4 aces. However, so we would think that would be the probability would be 4 out of 13. But one of our aces is already counted in the number of spades. Because the ace of spades, it's already part of that 13 out of 52 from the probability of spades. So we don't count it twice. So really the probability of aces is the 3 remaining aces, which is ace of clubs, ace of hearts, and ace of diamonds. So our probability would be 13 out of 52 plus 3 out of 52. So if we add them together, that gives us 16 out of 52. And if we reduce, we can divide by 4 top and bottom, gives us 4 out of 13. So the probability of drawing a card that is a spade or an ace would be 4 out of 13, which gives us the answer choice C. So we have a bag contains 4 red marbles, 10 blue marbles, and 6 yellow ones. What's the probability that you will select at random a marble that is not red? So we want to look at the probability of not red marble. So you think about which marbles are not red. It has to be the blue and the yellow marbles. So that would be 10 plus 6, which gives us 16 out of a total number of marbles. That would be 16 plus the 4 red, which is 20. So the probability would be 16 out of 20. But if we look at our answer choices here, it's in decimal form, which sometimes probabilities could be in the form of. So first things first, let's reduce this. 16 divided by 20. So 16 over 20, we can divide by 4 top and bottom. Gives us 4 over 5. And 4 over 5 as a decimal is 0.8. So the probability of you drawing a marble at random and it not being red is 0.8, which is answer choice C. Now we have a bag containing 6 red marbles and 4 black marbles. 2 marbles are drawn with replacement from the bag. What's the probability that both marbles are black? So when we say with replacement, that means that you pull out a marble and you put it back into it, right? So a way to approach this problem is to create kind of what's called a probability tree. So to create that tree, what we do is we have 2 branches. That's the 2 possibilities when you draw a marble. So either you have red or you have a black. So on your first draw, the probability of you drawing a marble and getting red, that would be 6 out of a total of 10 marbles. And then for the black, it would have to be 4 out of 10. Now, the question says, what's the probability of you drawing both black marbles? So on our second attempt here, we would do another 2 offshoots. So we would have red and black. So if our first draw was a black marble, we would go off of here. That means that it would still be the same probability for black and red. So it'd be 4 out of 10 for black and 6 out of 10 for red. So the question says, what's probably drawing both black? So that means that if you were to pick black on your first draw and then black again on your second draw, these would be our 2 probabilities, 4 out of 10 and 4 out of 10. But because they're kind of independent from each other, you would actually multiply the 2 together. So it would be 4 out of 10, the probability of both black would be 4 out of 10 times 4 out of 10, which gives us 16 out of 100, and we our common factor would be 4, so we divide by 4, gives us 4 on top and 25 on the bottom. So creating a probability tree would be the best way to approach this problem, and the answer would be probability of drawing both black marbles would be 4 out of 25, which is answer choice D. But now let's think about the same scenario, but this time without replacement from the bag. So we're still looking for the probability of black marbles. So let's draw a tree again. So we have one branch for the red and one branch for the black. So this is a red branch and black. So this would be again 6 out of 10 for the red and 4 out of 10 for the black. However, this time, without replacement means when we pick the first marble out, we don't take it out. We don't put it back in again. So the total number of marbles is actually reduced by 1. So now for the red and black, so if you were to pick the black marble first, and then the next draw, you still have 6 red, but you only have a total of 9 marbles to choose from. And if you picked a black marble and that means there's only 3 black marbles left out of a total of 9. But again, because the question is saying what's the probability of picking both black marbles, we would go the same route. So we'd pick the first one here and the second one here. But this time, our fractions are different. They're not both 4 out of 10. So the probability of you drawing both black would be the first draw, which is 4 out of 10, times the second draw, which is 3 out of 9 this time. So that would be 12 over 90, which we can divide by 3, gives us 4 over 30. And we can divide by 2 again, that's a common, so it would be 2 out of 15. So this time it would be a smaller probability if we didn't replace it. So the probability of both black marbles would be 2 out of 15, which gives us answer choice C. So the number of adults living in a home on a randomly selected city block is described by the following probability distribution. The question says, what is the probability that 4 or more adults live in the same home? So the first thing to think about is, what is probability distribution? So in statistics, there are times where you have a set of different probabilities. That's called a probability distribution. But that probability distribution should always add up to equal to 1. So when we look at our probabilities right here, so we have our table, we have number of adults, and the probabilities of 1 adult, 2 adults, and 3 adults are given, which is 0.25, 0.50, and 0.15 respectively. The question is asking, what's the probability of 4 or more? So we know that whatever these 4 numbers are, they should always add up to equal to 1. So to find the probability, this missing probability here, what we do is we can say the probability of 4 or more is going to be the total 1 minus the probabilities of 1 adult, 2 adults, and 3 adults added together. So 0.25 for the 1 adult plus 0.50 for the 2 adults and 0.15 for the 3 adults. So if we add them up, let's see, so we'd have 0.25 plus 0.50, that's 0.75, plus 0.15 gives us 0.90. So it'd be 1 minus 0.90, which gives us 0.10. So the probability of 4 or more adults is 0.10. And that gives us answer choice A. Okay, so let's look at some problems involving the statistics part. So mean, median, mode, and range. So we want to consider the following 12 data points and what is the range of these data points. So as I mentioned earlier, the range is we take the highest data point and we subtract from the lowest data point. So the range here is we want to identify what is the biggest number in our 12 data points here. That would have to be 18. and we subtract from our smallest, which has to be 9. So 18 minus 9 just gives us 9. So the range of these data points is simply just 9, which is answer choice A. Okay, now we have the following data set is given, 4, 7, 7, 10, and 13. If 3 were to be added to every number in the data set, which of the following statistical measures will stay the same? So let's find all of the different statistical measures, right, of the given data set. So let's find, the easiest we can find is, let's find our range first, because what we just talked about that is we take the highest number and the lowest number and we subtract them. So that's going to be 13 minus 4. That gives us 9. Let's look at the mode. So mode is the one that shows up the most, which would be 7. The median is our middle number. We have to make sure it's a range from least to greatest, which it is in this case. So we have 4, 13, 7, 10, so that cancels out. So our median should be 7. And then our mean is we add up all our numbers. So 4 plus 7 plus 7 plus 10 plus 13. And we divide that by the number of data points, which is 5. So we get a calculator here. So 4 plus 7 plus 7 plus 10 plus 13 gives us 41 over 5. So it's 8.2. Okay, so those are the mean, median, mode, and range of the original data set. Now, the question says, what if you were to add 3 to every number in the data set? Which of the following measurements will stay the same? So let me move this down a little bit, just so we have more space. And we know that that gives us 8.2. Okay, so let's kind of make another column here of our new data set. So if we were to add 3 to all our data sets here, we're going to get 7, 10, 10, 13, and 16. So right away we see a lot of things change here, because for the mean, that would give us totally different numbers, because we have 7 plus 10 plus 10 plus 13 plus 16 over 5. Without having to calculate it, we know it's going to not give us 8.2. So that would not work. But if you want to calculate it, that gives us, let's see, 7 plus 10 plus 10 plus 13 plus 16 divided by 5 is 11.2. So that changes. The median, again, that would change, because the median here, that would be 10. The mode would also change, because the number that shows up the most now is not 7, it's going to be 10. However, the range is going to stay the same, because we're still doing 16 minus 7, which is still going to give us 9. So no matter if it's the original set or the new set, the range is the one that does not change, which is answer choice D. So now let's talk about mean. So the mean of 5 numbers is 12. 4 of the numbers are 10, 15, 11, and 13. What is the missing number? So we're given that the mean is of 12. The mean of 5 numbers is 12. And we know 4 of the numbers. We know it's 10, 15, 11, 13, and we don't know the 5th number though. So let's call that 5th number, that missing number, x. So the formula to find the mean, again, is adding all the numbers up and dividing by however many numbers there are. So we would say that we would have the 4 numbers that are given, 10 plus 15 plus 11 plus 13 plus the 5th number, which is the x, divided by 5, because there's a total of 5 numbers in our set. And that should be equal to the mean, which is given to us by 12. So we now have an equation to solve for x. So the first thing to do, let's add up our numbers here. 10 plus 15 plus 11 plus 13. That should be 49 plus x over 5. And then to get x by itself, first thing to do is let's get rid of our denominator 5. So multiply both sides by 5. That cancels down here. So 49 plus x equals to 60. And then to get x by itself, we subtract by 49. So x has to be 11. So that should be our missing number. And that gives us answer choice C. Now let's look at a question involving medians. So a list of 7 numbers has a median of 10. 6 of the numbers are 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 15. What is the 7th number if the list is still ordered and the median remains 10? So we're given that the median is 10 and we're given 6 of these numbers and we need to find the 7th. So let's list out the 6 numbers here. So 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 15. So the question is, we need to figure out where would the 7th number be in a way where the median remains 10. So we want the median to still be 10 here. So it has to be the middle number. So the only way for that to happen is the number has to be less than 10, because any number greater than 10, so no matter if it is 11 or 16 or 13, what will happen is it would be on the right side of this 10 if you were to order it from least to greatest. If you were to put any number, let's say we put 16 on the very end here, right? So if we do that, you'll notice that the median is no longer 10. It's actually going to be 12, because we would have 3 on the side and 3 on this side. So we can't have it like that. So that means that the only way for that to happen is if our number is less than 10. So for instance, the only option would be 5, because we would have 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 15. So if we start crossing out on both sides, we'll notice we'll eventually get 10 as our median. So the only option would have to be 5, because it's the only one that is to the left of 10. Therefore, our answer choice would have to be C. So another problem involving medians. 6 numbers are arranged in ascending order: 5, 9, 12, x, 20, and 24. The median number is 16. Find the value of x. So it's already assembled from least to greatest for us, and we need to find out what x is such that the median will give us 16. So because we have 6 numbers, we know that in order to find the median, we would have to find the average of the 2 middle numbers and then divide it by 2 to find the median. So if we start canceling out from left to right, cancel out the 5, the 24, the 9, the 20, we're left with just the 2 middle numbers, 12 and x. So what we would do is we would add 12 plus x divided by 2. That should be our median. But we know the median is given to us as 16. So we can say 12 plus x over 2 gives us 16. So we have an equation. So let's get rid of our denominator 2. So multiply both sides by 2 first. It cancels. 12 plus x equals to 32. And to get x by itself, we subtract 12. So x has to be 20. So that would be our missing value of x, which gives us answer choice A.